Welcome, welcome everyone on behalf of the City of The Hague and Placemaking Europe. Now I'll pass the video of Alderman van Asten, who is welcoming us. Thank you.
I am Robert van Asten, Alderman for Mobility and of the beautiful Zegbroek district in the municipality of The Hague. A large part of Zegbroek consists of pre-war neighborhoods. The area is loved, but over the years there has been much more traffic than the neighborhood can handle. Also, climate change has affected the area and work has to be done against flooding and heat stress. In short, we have to make decisions on how we manage our space in the neighborhoods. Many residents are concerned. In the Bomenbuurt, which is part of the district, residents have drawn up their own neighborhood vision. In this document, the residents indicate that they want to create more space for bicycles, extra greenery, meeting spaces and areas for movement and recreation. In order to achieve this, a group of residents initiated a car-sharing cooperation. As a result, now fewer cars need to be on the street. I wholeheartedly support such initiatives, as they serve as great examples for the rest of the city. Many other cities face the same challenges. We can learn from each other. Today we would like to exchange knowledge and experience with you about the central question. How do we ensure that residents and entrepreneurs in a neighborhood choose an environment where the quality of life has a central role and where cars need less space? I wish you an instructive afternoon. Good luck.
Thank you so much to the Alderman Robert van Asten for this very inspiring introduction. This is the question of today. How can we ensure that citizens and businesses can co-create better neighborhoods? And how can we ensure that the choices that both policymakers and citizens, that the choices that they make actually create more sustainable environments? Let's please play the video of Lilian's and I promise you will enjoy it.
Welcome to the Bomenbuurt, a beautiful, cozy neighborhood built before World War II, but also a gritty, densely populated neighborhood. Relatively many people per square kilometer are living here. The streets are narrow, so there isn't a lot of room for everything. And climate change and population growth are putting even more pressure on the public space. Choices have to be made to keep the Bomenbuurt a pleasant place to live in. For young people and not so young people, for people with and without a car. Because the street belongs to everyone. So how are we going to do that? Placemaking or bottom-up initiatives will improve the neighborhood's livability, and the municipality of The Hague will help by experimenting with the public space together with the residents. In the Bomenbuurt, residents have started sharing cars with each other in a cooperative. Shared mobility instead of owning personally literally frees up space in the streets. Space that can be used for other important things to make the neighborhood future-proof. In order to make the sidewalks free and accessible for pedestrians again, residents can request a bicycle parking platform from the municipality. This platform, the size of one parking space, offers room for 8 bicycles. If the residents like these extra bicycle parking spaces, the municipality will widen the sidewalk and place permanent bicycle racks on it. The platform will then be moved to another street to tackle the same problem there. Another good example of such an experiment, initiated by residents, is the so-called debate mobile. This is like a picnic bench on wheels, the size of a parking space. There are growing plants and spices on it, and there is also a tiny library cabinet. The municipality encourages these kinds of placemaking initiatives and experiments. Experimenting with mobility and public space, especially parking spaces, is not just for fun, it's necessary. Together we need to think about the future of the neighborhood now. The municipality is very curious about experiences and lessons learned from other cities.
Now it's time to hear the reflection of Demetrio Scopelliti of the City of Milan, of the Agency for Mobility and the Environment. Now I leave you with Demetrio.
So thank you very much for the invitation. I'm Demetrio Scopelliti, Head of Planning and Public Space at AMA, City of Milan, and I'm going to present you what we did here in Milan to establish tactical urbanism as a planning strategy. We have a plan in the City of Milan to transform our city in the future and to make it more livable, greener, and more sustainable. The COVID-19 made us talk about and questioning about what is normality. We want to go back, we really want to go back to something like this, to an idea of spending our time in the gridlock and to have an idea of mobility which is conceived in the past century, or we want to transform it. And if we have to transform it, probably we have to do it now, immediately, without waiting for the next day. How to do that? Basically, the business as usual tool that we have to transform public space are the public works procedures that takes millions of euros. It takes years from the first line on the project to the realization and implementation, and are not reversible. If any design is not perfect, it will remain like that forever, because no one will ever change it again unless we start the same process. And we thought that there are other tools, design tools, that could be used for transforming public space that comes actually from the bottom, and the tactical urbanism tool particularly. Something that we can, a methodology that we can use to transform public space, spending thousands of euros instead of millions, in transforming places in months instead of years, with projects that are reversible, that if for any reason something doesn't work, we can go back and redesign it again. This methodology allowed us to change spaces like this. Why don't we try just coloring with paint and take and reclaim the public space for people instead of cars? And if it doesn't work, we go back. Actually, it worked, and now we are defining, we're actually constructing the permanent design of the project, which will be a typical Italian piazza, like one of our favorite in the cities. To do this kind of transformations, we set a series of tools. A toolkit which include paint, asphalt paint, traffic paint that we typically use for designing car parks, for instance, that highlight the public space that we reclaim. Also including asphalt art initiative and collaboration with artists. Then we defined a series of tools to define the pedestrian space, like bollards and curbs, in order to defend those spaces from cars, which are particularly aggressive in Milan when it's about, we're talking about parking. And then we use street furniture, very simple street furniture, planters, benches, tables, and activators like ping pong tables, which are one of our favorite street furniture element that really makes the space activated 24/7. And then seasonal activities, which we included ice skating tracks during the winter. And what most important of all, we included participation and volunteering into our process by making the citizens realizing the project themselves in order to appropriate the space in first person. And then we also included them and collaborated with them in order to organize community events. And because we believe that this project could not exist without collaboration of the citizens. In order to generate a multicentric city that transforms spaces like this, called piazza, but actually a car park, into a livable space. And this is Piazza d'Ergono, the first pilot that we realized in 2018, and which is now, it became permanent after just 3 years from the first line through the interim and the construction process. And this is another intersectional project I love, because it's a great space, like many in our cities, where cars could do any kind of maneuver. The only issue is we are in front of a school, and the space could be used in a totally different way in order to make our children and their parents able to meet, gather, and play in front of the school during the school days. And this project actually was a game changer, because we realized that projects in front of schools could be really key in order to transform our cities, because they are attractive. They already attract people and social life, and they are incredibly successful. And when it's about designing better cities for the future, we always have to take into account that children are the key target that we have to include. The same approach, just to mention, the same approach, we use it also to transform the spaces, the public spaces in front of shops and restaurants and bars, in order to allow the use of the street in a different way, in order to put tables and chairs, and to make also these public spaces more livable and vibrant, also for the local economy. People are the key elements of our cities that build communities and make our cities more livable. And we have to have them fighting for change and for a better city. Thank you very much.
So one of the main concerns that the Hague and other cities have, it's about what's happening with cars that cannot park in the street. One question. Second question related to that is how do you develop relationship with citizens, entrepreneurs, business to make these changes possible and effective?
So we're really talking about nodes, very important nodes for the community, but very small numbers concerning the amount of car parks and of kilometers of streets available for cars. Actually, this is really important to refocus the perspective about what we're doing. We are taking spaces in front of schools that should be for people, that should be for children, taking out 15, 20, 25 car parks when we're talking about having hundreds of thousands. So the traffic is a fluid, and both the traffic and the car parks reorganize themselves very quickly, and sometimes experts say they evaporate also. They change their routes, and they change their progress. And sometimes people even stop using the car and maybe start walking, which is also another good effect. Concerning the engagement, we started actually the program as a top-down. We wanted to understand what we were able to do in terms of tactical urbanism. Was a new methodology, so we had to start it from zero. At first meeting, when I was talking to our mobility experts in the City of Milan, that we wanted to use traffic paint to define the pedestrian space, that they thought we were crazy. We learned how to do it, and we insisted into trying to find a way through bureaucracy. And after the first year of pilots, we launched an open call to citizens in order to sign with them a pact of collaboration on these projects. So they the community don't propose just a place where to implement a public plaza, but they propose themselves to collaborate with the city in order to do it. By signing a protocol, basically a contract, that says what the city does and what the citizens and the community doesn't change. So maintaining the public space, organizing events, taking care of the public life, etc., etc. So there is a mutual collaboration. I think the key success of these projects is really defined by these.
Let me ask you a last question related to that you briefly mentioned. So which were the key ingredients for doing it that fast in such an effective way?
We keep it light. We keep it as light as possible. So we spend as few money as we can, and we keep it light, and we are open to sponsorization, and we always went step by step. So the first pilot was an experiment, the second pilot was a better experiment, and then we built a process which takes all the city departments involved. We don't have to stress the idea that you start with the perfect program, but you have to learn. by mistakes also, in order to implement it. And it's something that I suggest and recommend also to other cities who are interested to do it.
I would like to welcome the intervention of Charles Landry. Charles Landry not only is one of the most renowned urbanists all around the globe, the inventor of the concept of creative city, working around creative bureaucracy lately, but he's also have been working recently for the BMW Foundation, particularly for the Rise Cities program, on mobility and how mobility can be an enabler of human and urban development. So let's hear from him, and after that, let's open the debate to questions and to cross-fertilization between the different speakers that we are lucky to have today.
I'm so pleased to be part of your event in The Hague. Mobility is such a big thing. And in work I've been doing with the BMW Foundation, we've been thinking of how you can reframe mobility. And we believe that it really is a driver for human development. And when we look at mobility, I think it's quite interesting also to look at immobility. And in a sense, whose mobility are we paying attention to? With no mobility in every sense, you are disadvantaged. So mobility is really about opportunities, connectivities, choices, the ability to have a job, and much, much more. And I think everybody in the audience knows that great placemaking is human-centered. It's designed with the whole community in mind. And at its heart is ease of access. And here, the idea of the city of proximity, the 5-minute city, the 15-minute city, whatever minutes you want to use is really important. But the very big issue is, and these are the dramatic dilemmas, whose voices are being heard when we think about mobility? Whose data are we using when we're thinking about that? So often data that is created as normally a 42-year-old man in mind, but not all the other groups that exist in a city. But how do you get there? Well, I think it means changing mindsets, because mobility then is more than transport. It means too that those in transport departments need to connect much better with the social, economic, the cultural departments, and all of them.
First question that comes in mind to me, and it's quite related to the case of, quite relevant for the case of The Hague. It's about the residents that we don't see. These people that is not easy to reach out, or how do we take into account everyone in the process of policy making, particularly in mobility?
Once you take a 360-degree perspective, it also means looking at all the types of people you've got there. So to feel what it's like to be a child in a city, to feel what it's like to be someone who's quite old, to feel really in the heart, in your heart, what it's like to be a woman as you maneuver around a city, or a disabled person. It's trying to put your mind into the other person's place and then really to try to feel it. Once you do that, it would be a real shift. I think that visceral experience could change people's perception and shift the way they think.
How would you bring creative bureaucracy for the municipality of The Hague?
You have to try an experiment. You should develop an experimental culture. Let's say you've got 10 ideas. 6 are probably not so good. 3 are probably okay. And 2 are probably brilliant and actually transform a place. But you have to create the conditions for people to think, plan, and act with imagination.
Charles, I would like you to hear your reaction about what you have heard.
We're actually more or less saying the same thing. Let's create an experience so people can actually really feel what these new little innovations, and sometimes big innovations, actually feel like. And once you see them in reality, then people replicate. The other thing that struck me was also, in a sense, the COVID opportunity. Of course, COVID is a crisis. We know all of that. But suddenly it allowed us to see what really matters, seeing streets that are more empty, less cars and so on.
It's something that comes up immediately in the public discussion, the discussion that we have, not the fear about getting rid of cars. Is it fundamental, this fear? Is it still there, or
I
are
think
we
it is fundamental.
overvaluing?
There is a fear. And that's why it's so wonderful having people, lots of people who bridge their fear, helping us who might be a bit fearful feel it's okay. I once did a survey in Sweden about how you learn best from examples, and it happened to be about reinventing libraries. It doesn't matter, but the conclusion was the best way of changing people's minds was together, let's say The Hague or whoever, going to that place they admire, having a chat and seeing it in operation, which I think reduces those thresholds.
What I wonder is how do we ensure the residents remain involved in their environment?
One mechanism, of course, is this is open calls, because that's already saying be involved. The question, and your question is really important, is okay, that was an initial trigger that started something off. How do we continue that? And I think perhaps the open call idea then develops into a sort of more open discussion culture where the public administration has slightly changed because it's become a more listening culture. Because the old-fashioned view was obviously to some extent, oh, there's the policymaker over there, they just do it, and then we're angry that they're doing things we don't like. And here we are co-sharing. We're also sharing responsibility. I mean, you talked about, obviously, you did your car sharing, but now we're sharing responsibility for our place.
It's also probably one of the central elements of placemaking. No? The idea is not doing this because the outcomes will improve our life, but also to what extent can we enjoy the process.
And if one can find that culture that is more open, where one is allowed to make mistakes even. And, you know, when we say mistakes, sometimes these mistakes are tiny mistakes. It's only about improving a bit. Occasionally there's a big mistake.
The complainers become in a minority, but that will take some time.
Unfortunately, there will remain some complainers, but I'm just looking at that street you showed, which just had cars. I'm just imagining it with about 15 gaps in it with these funny things you're doing, these lovely things you're doing. That already will create air and sort of openness in that quite narrow street. And when you then, let's say, put a tree or some plants in there, it already psychologically will feel completely different.
The question was asked by Tina Govan. So the question is, how do we create the conditions for an experimental culture when experiments are not happening in specific cases, but generally for the whole administration? And how can we break in through the fear and set mindsets in city bureaucracy?
Yeah, that's a big question. I mean, mostly what I've found through time is that a crisis, perhaps, or a living condition that is just not good enough, in other words, things are really bad, often triggers the change or the potential transformation. What you then, of course, need is a project champion. And that project champion, you know, ideally, if the mayoress says we want to go this direction, this usually legitimizes change, but it could be a councillor, it could be the person responsible for mobility who then says, haven't you seen that they had this problem in this other city and this is how they solved it? So it's a combination of the sort of more hierarchical things. Ideally, the top person says, go for it, and then unleashes that stuff that's coming from below and is listening to it. But at the same time, as I said previously, seeing a project that's worked, that did the thing that you might be fearful of, and let's say it was in a neighboring city or a neighboring country, is a very powerful thing.